Hey guys, it's Tiny Tom Logan back with another video for you, and today we're going to be taking a look at GTX 980 SLI courtesy of the Asus Strix cards. I've obviously got a pair of them and I'm well excited to get these because they're the first big proper cards that I've seen with the new automated process, which basically means it's all fully computer automated when they're built. There's no flux used. It keeps the PCB all nice and clean and kind of catch free. It also, because you take the human element out of it, it should long term mean that they're going to be much more harder wearing as well. But as I'll show you in a little bit, the PCB on this thing is more of a matrix style PCB rather than a Strix kind of mainstream PCB. It's totally over engineered, 12 power phases on it, but it's got the new triple fan cooler on it as well. Again, we will look at that in a minute. Right from the beginning, £649 is the price that I am being given by Asus. They are available on the Overclockers website. Put the link down for you underneath. But one thing I do want to say right from the very beginning is they are only up for pre-order at the moment, and I do know that they have shifted an awful lot of these cards on pre-order already. So if you are looking at these and kind of and you decide at the end of this video that with the information that I give you and you decide that this is the card for you, you might want to go and get in that waiting list if you've got the money to hand. If you've just been paid or something, it's obviously totally up to you. I just want you to be aware that even though these are only up for pre-order, an awful lot of them have been pre-ordered already. Now I'm assuming that overclockers are going to have an awful lot of stock when they do come in, but it's at the end of the day, I'm just giving you the information. Obviously, again, that's only for those of you in Blighty, but for those of you in the States and the like, you're just going to have to go and look at your specific e-tailers, retailers or whatever and decide which way you want to go. But I'm not going to bore you any longer. Let's have a look at these beautiful cards. So we move on to our first look at the card. And there she is. Biggest change compared to the older Strix model is the fact that we are now running 3 fans rather than 2. But we've also got an addition of colour. Now the last Strix range was all black and quite stealthy, and that's where the whole kind of mantra with the owl came in. We're now seeing a lot more red. I don't know, I think the whole market is kind of heading towards a red equals gamer type of thing. But it does confuse the difference between the Strix cards and the ROG cards. I personally preferred the all black approach, but if you've got a red based system, you're absolutely going to love these. And obviously now that there's just endless amounts of red boards, so it's not too much of an issue. But beside that point, we'll start to pick out some other things that we need to talk about. So around here you can see this would be where a normal PCB would stop. Now this has got the fully automated process of Asus on board, but they've got a massive PCB. As you can see how much extra comes out. When we do talk about the PCB as well, we can see, look, you can see the brace comes here, through here, and bolts in there. But then we've also got this plate here to help keep things rigid, and then you can see that it does go down underneath the edge of the card as well. I'm just trying to get it so you can actually see. You can see that we've got another plate up here for MOSFETs. There's a lot about card rigidity, and when you feel and you pick it up by one end, you can feel that it's very rigid. If there's any sag on this, it's going to be to do with the case stroke motherboard rather than the card itself, because it is very rigid. It's quite nice. Another thing, as you can see, that we've got some huge heat pipes all hanging out the side. I do believe these are 10mm heat pipes as well. They're ginormous, and then these are 8s. We've got another 8 around this side, but like I said, we've got some huge heat pipes, and you can see this enormous one running down the side here, but it does come out the end of the card as well, so you can see that there is quite an awful lot of cooler to be had. Now these are what I would call upside down clips, because normally the little latch would be on the other side, but we're starting to get more and more cards like these with them this way round. I will show you the little LEDs so that you can tell whether your cable's plugged in properly or not. We do have this red hold down plate on the back. Now I do like a splash of colour around the back on the PCB. It gives us a little bit more to look at. You do get the Strix eyes on it as well. And the back plate is simple enough without it being boring, but it still gives you something really to look at inside your rig. Again, I will show you in a bit, but this will actually light up as well. And there's a white LED behind it, but you do get the red lighting up and the white. It doesn't bleach through, which is kind of nice. So there we go. The only other thing that we really need to talk about is we get the good old-fashioned DVI-D on the back, but then we do have a HDMI and 3 display ports. But the other thing that we do need to remember, if I get that to stand up, is we do, obviously, have 2 to test. Now, because we have 2, now magically we've gone from 2 cards to 1 card, but this is because I'm filming this after I've done all my testing and everything. We did want to take a look at the nice new Asus PCB. So, not safe for work, I have completely stripped it down. Now I will just show you the cooler, because you can see that you've got the enormous heat pipes that pretty much take up the middle of the card. And then we've got an active cooling point for all of the power regulators, the MOSFETs there. And you can see that that's built into the cooler itself. So the MOSFETs are getting actively cooled. You can actually see here, this actually comes down and touches the chokes, which is quite a nice point. But that's your cooler. But then we have the PCB. Now, like I've said to you, it is that automated process. We have got a much bigger PCB, and to be fair, this feels more like a matrix card than a Strix card because the PCB is so massive. I mean, look at that 12-phase power delivery there. It's just enormous. I mean, it's just huge up that end. But the surprise is when we come around the back, because it is just so clean and no latches. Because normally with all the points, you'd have little bits of solder sticking up around the back, and this is just unreal. I mean, the camera will come in and you can see, but it is such a clean back of a PCB. It's unreal. This is the place that you can really tell that no massive spikes coming out the back or anything. But we can do all that around here as well. It's just such a clean and well laid out PCB. I actually really like it. Okay, so here we can see them in the test system. And yes, I do have a ROG SLI bridge. The motherboard is the Rampage 4 Black Edition. We're still running this because it means that all of our graphs all link up. Now, there are 2 firm slots between the cards, so it gives us a nice amount of breathing area, but it does mean, just as an FYI, that you need the 3 slot or the triple SLI bridge for these. There is actually another SLI bridge in the middle here, but it's just in case that you were wondering, you now know. So, system we got in there is a 4960X at 4.4 GHz. Then we've got 16 GB of 2133 Corsair Dominator Platinum. The power supply is an AX1500i. Massive overkill, as I'll show you later on, but the power supply is just there so that when we do quad SLI, quad fire, all that type of stuff, that it is able to do that, and we don't have to keep swapping the power supplies in and out. Also gives us a clean feed throughout as well. We've got a 240 GB Neutron GTX for the operating system and benchmarks, and then we've got a 512 GB Force LX, both Corsair solid state drives, and the last one is for the games only. The cables that I'm running are black and red mixed paracord cable mod cables. I've been using them for ages now as well, and I do really like them. They are so soft, and also it's in our custom 760T case. One thing I do want to say while we're here though, if I zoom in, I do need to turn the light in the room off to be able to show you this properly, is the lights on the side are not static, which is my only bugbear with these cars, as they throb. But they don't kind of go on and off together at the same sort of times either. So you can see them start to light up and then they go away. I have asked Asus about firmware for this, and apparently it's a little bit more complicated than that, but we're hoping that in future generations they might at least be able to give us the option, because I think personally you should be able to choose on, off, or have them pulse, not just be fixed with them pulsing. I personally think the pulse on this actually cheapens them a little bit, and it's, like I said, optically it's the one thing I don't like about these graphics cards. You might, the colouring that's there, the lighting, everything is perfect. If I could just turn them so it just stayed on, I'd be immensely happy. It might be something that one of you out there might be able to mod or something like that later on. It would certainly be something I would personally look at. So first things first, power and temperatures before we move on to the benchmarks. We'll do the power first, and you can see here 432 watts. This was for a single card. I'll show you SLI in a second. And one thing that we can see is 1216 is the default clock, 317 is the boost, but then once GPU boost 2 gets involved, we do get a 1404 megahertz. If we have a look at the power graph, we can see that basically what we've got is the standard Strix and then the SLI. So we've got 406 watts for the standard Strix, which it puts it in about the right sort of place there really. The power usage for the SLI, you can see it's just 644 watts. But one thing that we can draw from this is that there is a 240 watt difference by adding the second card. Because the 406 watts, we do say that our system generally pulls about 225 watts anyway, so the maths does generally, give or take, work out about right. The other thing that we can look at today with this is our temperatures. Now the temperatures with this card, one thing I do need to stress is basically it's the card is just ridiculously quiet. But one thing that we can see here is the maximum we had was 73 degrees. But then if you look at the top one, it's 83 degrees. Now the reason why we flagged those up is the 83 degrees was in SLI. So that would have been, that was the top card after a good old bench session. So it would have been drawing heat off of the lower card. Yet it did still stay very quiet. The lower temperature, the 73 degrees one, was the single card, and was it was just whisper quiet. The coolers on these are amazing. Okay, so then we can move on to the benchmarks. We've worked out that it's really cool, we've worked out that it's really quiet, and we've also seen that it overclocks pretty well as well. So then we're going to move on to the benchmarks. We're going to start with 3D Mark Fire Strike Ultimate. Ultimate is the first 4K one. It's been introduced recently, so if you've got the original 3D Mark, there is an update and it will let you have the 4K option. So the SLI is pretty much near the top. The only one above it, and it's pretty close, but the only one above it is the 4-way 980 that we did. So yes, we did have 4 980s in there, and there's about an 1800 point difference. But you can see that there's a huge step from 980 SLI up to 980 Ti SLI, and I mean we're talking about a 2250 point difference there. So that between two very similar cards, considering it's just two cards, is an enormous step up. And then if we come a little bit further down, and this is another quite interesting one, is if you have a look at the 4,757 points for the overclock, that's actually only 1,000 points behind 2 980s. So that should show you that this card has got some absolute serious gonads. Far Cry 4, I've put this in here because if you have a look, that the SLI result is actually below the other results. There's a very simple way to explain that. It's just the game isn't using that second card. That could be a driver problem, but it's more than likely a game developer problem. We have seen that with multiple games in the past. It's normally wheeled games that seem to have problems with it, but this one definitely does. But you can see there in the graph, we've got you the 4K results, 1440, and the 1080p results there, so it's going to cover all the bases for you there. And you've also got the single card, the overclock, and the SLI result. When we move swiftly on, and yes, I have got the results in front of me because I don't script anything that I do. I always kind of do it off the cuff because then it's more of a natural response. We move on to Grand Theft Auto. Grand Theft Auto, I have to admit, it's a bit of a hit and miss. From a bencher's point of view, where I'm trying to replicate these results consistently all the time, we don't change anything but the graphics cards, and we obviously always use the latest drivers. And sometimes the drivers can make a huge difference in both good and bad respects. So the SLI is at the top where you would expect it. I mean, even the 4K result, you're looking at 82 frames per second there, and that's, don't forget, it is with it maxed out. But the standard ones are even can be below the original 980 Ti. And I think that's probably a driver implementation. So maybe this one's not so good with the 980 Ti, but NVIDIA are so good when they do bring them out. But this is also why you should never just update the drivers regularly. It is always worth looking into seeing how they can affect the performance on the games that you most likely play. I do know people on the forums that will update their drivers, think that they've lost a few frames per second, as you can see can be possible with these, and then actually revert back to the older ones. So for those of you that do like to be a little bit more hands-on with your kit, this is something to keep in mind, because it does seem to be happening very regularly with Grand Theft Auto 5. I mean, these results, I actually went in and we only run a specific part of the benchmark, and actually went in and ran them 2 or 3 times more afterwards just to double check that it was 100% right and there wasn't a bit of a quirk or a balk in there or anything. And these are right. And I personally think that the Strix, compared to the other results that we got, and don't forget you can click the link and go and have a look on the OC3D forums, they were consistent with everything. So when you get an odd one out, it's generally that specific game stroke driver, and it's just not playing ball at that time. And then at the back, we can move on to Assassin's Creed Unity. And this is a lovely one because it's pretty much at the top of the graph again. We've got the SLI at the top where we would expect it, but then when you move further down, you can see that it's in good company with the Titan X's and all the 980 Tis. I mean, when you look at, you've even got the 295X2 and the Fury X are down past the middle of the graph. It just goes to show that even a single one of these has got an immense amount of kahunas and drivers to pump that all through. It also goes to show that you don't need 12 million gigabytes of VRAM to run a lot of these games, even though people seem to think that 6 gigabytes not enough. Okay then peeps, so moving swiftly on to the conclusion. I am on a bit of a deadline with this one, and it's a personal one, and I just want to get it done because I've had some time off. But anyway, so the award that we're going to give it is the Gold Award, and it's a pretty much undoubted Gold Award as well. You can pick them up for £649 on overclockers. I do know that they are still up for pre-order, but they are flying out the door. People are pre-ordering these like they are the last graphics card on the planet. So it's a good idea that if you are interested in one of these, I would get yourself either in the queue or watch to see how many are actually going to be coming into the country, because I know that it's not that there's not going to be very many of them, but I just know a lot of people have bought them already, even though they're not actually out yet. So performance of the card was absolutely mind-blowing. It's one of the best 980 Tis that we've had here. I would personally say it's the best looking one that we've had. I really like that backplate. The cooler not only looks the business, but it does also perform really well as well. It's properly quiet, and 73 degrees for a fully loaded card that's putting out practically chart-topping results is absolutely bob on. Even in SLI, as I showed you, obviously the top card's going to get warmer. That's just the way it is. Doesn't matter what brand you use, there'll always be a warmer one. So the fact that it stayed around the 80 degrees mark, even in a pack system with all the heat being dumped into the case, does go to show you just how quite well they have done with these. The fact that they all stayed really quiet as well was another just an absolute bonus point for me. There's only a little gripe. One is the light, it flashes. I've said before, I think you should be able to choose on, off or flash. The flash isn't a bad thing. A lot of people will like it, but I think there are a lot of us out there that would prefer to be able to turn it off, or at least, because this one does look quite pretty, be able to just fix it so it's on all the time. The other thing, and it's going to be something that's it's a little bit more of a political type thing, and a kind of everyone is putting red on everything at the moment. If you've got a black and red system, then you're not going to worry about it. But the Strix before was an all black card, and it did give it the kind of understated and kind of a stealthy look. You could put it in any rig and it wouldn't have stood out, and it wouldn't have looked bad. You could have put it in one of Asus's own gold motherboards when the gold heatsink ones were all flicking around, and it would have worked in that. I did it with the Strix rig last year, but at the same time, if you were using another manufacturer's board with a totally different colour on it, the fact that the graphics cards are all black, it would have fit in. Now, everyone has got a plethora of red componentry at the moment, and it's something that I'm not particularly happy about. I like to see a little bit of brand identity. Now, I know there are, they have the ROG, and that was where the red was, but I'm not 100% sure about moving the red into the Strix branding as well. Obviously, like I said, in this, it does look the much nuts, and if you were going to buy a ROG motherboard, obviously it's going to make sense. But it's just, I don't know, it's one of those ones where Ace is going to go, oh, you know, did you have to mention it? It's a good looking card, it performs well, what more do you want to go on about? But sometimes, for those of you out there, and I know there are loads of you out there that are not fans of red. I personally am, so I'm kind of shooting myself in the foot because I actually really like the way it looks. And in this rig, it does look really nice. But speaking up for those of you out there that don't like red, it's, you know, it might be a kind of a bit of a hard choice because there is a fair bit of it on there. It's on the side, you can see it in the top, and that red bit on the top is something you can really see. So I think the red is a brave choice from Asus. Like I've said, obviously with their ROG and the Gamer's Choice stuff that they're putting out now, the Gamer Pro range, they've all got accents of red in, so I can see it. Now I know that they do the, they've got the Sabertooth and the Tough stuff, and they've obviously started doing white products recently, so they do have a bit of a mix and around in there. I just think we do need something that's a little bit more kind of, the graphics card to kind of come in a monochrome, or, you know, kind of an understated, just go for black, do you know what I mean, so that there's something that will please everyone. So I'm not going to go on about it anymore, because at the end of the day, it does perform amazing. And it was consistently good right the way through all of our tests as well. It is an expensive card, but at the end of the day, if you want something cheap, then you're not going to get the type of audible performance that we got. So really, really quiet, still keep the temperatures down. You've got that fully automated process as well. So obviously it's we're going to be testing it out now, but it should mean that the lifetime of these cards should go on and on as well. Also, the componentry on this, I mean, with the 12 power phases on it, it's practically over engineered, and I think that has spoken through with all the performance as well. So it's not a cheap card, but at the end of the day, it's a quality, high quality branded card as well. So I'm going to leave all those points with you for you to play around and think about. I personally love it. I'm not going to want to send these back, to be honest with you. I wish I could just leave them in there for me to even just stare at. But if you like the review, make sure you give a tick underneath. Make sure that if you are interested in buying it, you can follow through to the Overclock 3D website and go and look at all of the graphs, because I think there's 25 or 26 pages I did on this one this time. So there's a lot of benchmark testing that we just don't have time to feature in the video, because I do try and keep them as small as possible, as much as you wouldn't believe. But anyway, this is Tiny Tom Logan with the Gold Award-winning Asus GTX980 Strix 980 Ti Strix SLI. See, that was a mouthful in itself. Out. Ding!